And we have present, who's being the secretary here, Hillary or Courtney?
That'll be me.
Hi, Hillary. Would you note that the four of us, myself, John Levac, Mary Tivy, and Barb Jefferson are in attendance. Matt Bulmer sent regrets that he had other meetings that were going to probably overlap this. He will join if possible, if these other meetings finish before we're done.
All right, that's been noted.
Okay. I don't have any opening remarks. Does anyone, any member of the committee have any opening remarks, or can we move on to the disclosures? No? Okay, then we'll, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
None.
Okay. The minutes of the prior meeting, October the 5th, 2020, if everyone's had a chance to scan over those, are there any changes, errors, or omissions that anyone would like to bring up? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve said minutes.
So move.
Thanks, Mary. Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thanks, John.
All right. Okay, John. Sorry, John. We've got a resolution to read for that. Now that it's been approved and seconded. So we've got resolution.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that we do this by resolution. My apologies.
That's all right, John. You're doing great. So resolution 2021-001, that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted and written and distributed. So the October 5th, 2020 heritage minutes, and those have been carried.
Okay, that's moved by Mary, seconded by John, and all in favor. Okay, the business arising from those minutes being a heritage registry. I don't know where do we want to start on that. We've got a fair bit of stuff to cover here. Who would like to comment on that? Courtney, are you commenting on the heritage registry?
Hillary, I believe it was, I think you received an email or something about it that we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, so there's actually been a couple of emails. So Mary Tivy's been working on the heritage registry. So I'll let Mary discuss a little bit about that. And we also got an email from Councillor Balmer as well, who wanted to make some adjustments to that.
Okay, Mary, would you like to address that, please?
Sure. What I've done is taken information on all the plaqued properties and working with the forms that Julia had initiated. And I attached one of those in an email to you all, I believe yesterday. And those are forms that I'm just bear with me. I'm just going to reach one here.
Here, I've got one.
So,
I've got one here, Mary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So what I've done is simply for my ease of managing this stuff is I've created files for every property and filled out the forms, double checking some of the work that Julie had done. I think at this point, I need to work out a plan with Hillary to have this information back into the township computer files, because I've been working on paper files here. And so that's just a technical thing that she and I need to work out. And I'll just say that because we had decided to begin with the plaqued properties, in the process of looking at those properties that weren't plaqued, I've identified a number of properties that would, under the guidelines that we're using, be qualified to be on the register, and also qualify for visits from us when that's possible to look at plaquing them. That's all I have to say at this point. except this, that as I work through these files, it appears to me that there's a fair bit of research that's still pending on some of these properties. In other words, in order to be absolutely secure in our heritage identification, I think we need to have these rooted historically and culturally. And I don't mean that to sound academic. I just mean that we need to be very secure in our, with our criteria and with our assessment. So I'm not sure what Councillor Balmer had to say or what the administration would like to do in terms of bringing this forward. I would like to massage a little bit more the information we have on each property to make sure it's absolutely correct. And I know we've gone down this route before, but I still see some anomalies in the property descriptions and in the records.
So I guess, Mary, what you're saying is you want to be very clear on the provenance on each of these properties.
Thank you. That word, that noun escaped me, John, but you're right. And also, you know, one of the criteria is a contextual criteria in terms of how it represents the other, how it represents the area in which it's found. And so I can see that there are communities of families that in which this, you know, the sum is greater than the parts, really. And so this is something that interests me, and I'd like to just to make sure that I feel comfortable going forward with this. I don't think it serves us at all to be premature. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, Mary, thank you so much for all the very hard work you've done on this. I mean, everything to date is really fantastic. And I do take your point. I think it adds a lot more credibility to what we're trying to do by following your suggestions, that you really, it's not just a pile of stone or brick. There's a bigger story here. I thank you very much for that.
John, if I could also interrupt as well. So we've also got that listed as part of, on agenda item 10.1 as part of the 2021-2022 Heritage Committee. I think it might be appropriate to make a plan for that when we get to that section of the agenda.
Yeah, leafing through that was is pretty awesome. Actually, we got a lot to do. Anyways, but I just wanted to thank Mary because I know she's been working very diligently on this. Anyway, sorry, Hillary, I'm interrupting you. Would you care to carry on from this?
Can I add a comment, John?
Yes, of course.
Hillary and Courtney, I'm still confused. It was my understanding that there was a heritage list that Coastlands Township did have a heritage list dating from 2011. Now, I appreciate that in the minutes of these recorded events, it doesn't seem to be accurately documented, but that particular list has been referenced in minutes following that event. So I'm very confused about where we stand for the township having an official list of heritage properties. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, I could speak to that, Barb. So we, Courtney and I, we took a look through what we have currently saved with it on the township's drive with the properties that are documented as being on the Heritage Registry. There's not one document that lists all the properties that are on the Heritage Registry. And the Heritage Registry is also something that has to go to council eventually as well. So we just want to make sure we can get one concise document that has all of the heritage properties listed, that it's been reviewed in its entirety by the committee, and then also goes to council as well.
So I have a further question. So it sounds like you do have pieces and parcels of various listings. If an individual was to apply for a demolition permit for one of those properties, would council be able to enact their 60-day delay due to the documentation we have currently?
I'm sorry, so I don't believe with the records that we have on file that we do actually have a council endorsed registry. I believe we have an inventory list. So, and Hillary did spend quite a bit of time through the archives and going back and taking a look at that in the township files. So we do have a very comprehensive inventory list of properties, but we could not find documentation of when that list did in fact go to council for endorsement. So to answer your question, Barb, from the information we have, council would not have an opportunity to reassign a listed property to a registered property if a demo permit came forward, because as far as we know, we do not have a registry with listed properties.
Mary, you wanted to make a comment?
Thank you very much, ladies.
Mary, did you want to make a comment on it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was rubbing my temple. Well, what else to say is that, well, on the one hand, it's imperative we get this together. And on the other, the process that Hillary will probably talk about will involve public meetings, I think. And that's the basis on which I want to be very sure that we know what we're doing here, and that we don't have cracks in the list that would precipitate, questions and concerns about its viability. That's just an added comment.
Mary, what part of this requires public meetings? I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, I think Hillary and Courtney can speak to that.
Yes, so as part of the act, it does require, I believe right now with the current provisions in the act, it does require notice to be given to those properties that are added to a registry within 30 days of adding them. So it can happen after council has actually made that decision. However, it's been recommended that a public meeting occur before that. I don't think that's part of the act right now. It's not a requirement yet, but I do believe it's coming. So it's thought prudent to have that public meeting in advance of the report going to council for endorsement, to give those property owners an opportunity to kind of speak to it and to look at what is being suggested.
So I'm picturing a public meeting here with every property owner on the registry present. Am I picturing this right? Because that's a pretty strange picture.
It could be. It could be some maybe perhaps don't have an interest, or given that their properties are already plaqued, maybe they're already okay, or have an understanding that their property has some heritage significance. If we do it this year, we'll be looking at a remote public meeting. So we could have, 100 people or so listening in. More likely we'll have less than that.
Yeah, okay. My first recommendation would be, regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in when the timing of that meeting comes up, doing that via something like Zoom would make a heck of a lot more sense, I think, because then you would almost certainly have some attendance. In a live meeting, I have a real hard time picturing very many people attending at all. But I may be wrong about that. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
So if I could just recap on that, Hillary and Courtney. So each potential property owner would receive written notification, probably at best, about the idea of having their property on a historical registry for the Township of Pusnach. So we probably have at least 110 properties right now. So it would be at least that many residents being notified officially with township letterhead. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be the first part of the notification. And I guess what we would be looking for further clarification on, and probably relying on the act to clarify for us as well, is whether that has to happen before we take the report to council or afterwards within 30 days, and what the committee would advise is the best approach.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add, I have been through this process when I was with the City of Guelph Heritage Committee, and usually the information comes with a package that provides the homeowners some sense of what this means to them and how it's applied in other communities. And really, I think it's meant to alleviate their fears about the latitude of their ownership. And certainly when I was with the City of Guelph Heritage Committee, with thousands of properties, I think we had one objection. So it wasn't contentious at all. Anyway.
I agree. I think this is an opportunity. Sorry, John, I'm just kind of jumping in here.
Oh, not at all. Go ahead, Barb. Yeah.
I think this is a unique opportunity to us to promote what heritage properties mean to the township. Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Mary. I think this is another opportunity to showcase what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm. And at the community meetings that we had around this, it was the city planners and who ran the meetings, but we had displays and we had, the properties information and visual information there. And certainly not everyone came. There's, with these municipal meetings, not everyone came, but it's something that needs to be done one way or another. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Barb, you look like you want to say something.
No, I just, on and on we go. These projects become more and more onerous for Mary.
Yes,
we can discuss that later on in the agenda and possibly come up with something to help her.
You can, I've got a load of laundry. It's,
Anyways, Courtney, Hillary, any other comments at this point?
No, I think we're good from our end, John. I think we can move on.
Okay. We are down to, consent agenda. This is, what do we refer to as a consent agenda?
We don't have anything listed for that. So our next order of business is in committee reports. So we're under item 10.1, the Heritage Committee's goals and objectives for 2021 to 2022. So we've got that chart there, and we can go through each item in more detail individually. So we can start. Yeah.
We'll note that 7, 8, and 9, there are no comments with that in the minutes.
Excuse me.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Okay, so Mary must be running off to get a glass of wine. Leave that out of the minutes. Sorry. That was a side. That was just an aside. Moving on to item 10, committee reports. Now, staff has done a fabulous job here. This is really quite impressive. Do we want to go through this line by line? I don't know whether it'll take all that long. John, do you have any comments as to how much detail you want to go into at this point? I know Matt was very pleased with what he saw.
Yeah, and
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I've got Matt's email in front of me. I can also relay his comments as well when we get to the different sections of the table. Okay.
So why don't we start at the beginning and go through to the end?
All right, that sounds good. I can help you with that, John. So our first goal/objective is quarterly reporting to council on heritage initiatives and progress. We don't need a subcommittee for that, and there's no budget for that. So the person responsible for that would be myself as the secretary of the committee to draft reports based on committee approved reporting template. So that would be the first attachment to the agenda. And we can continue this from after this meeting, so February, go after that, so February 2021 and ongoing. Essentially, these reports going to council are just to update council on the progress of the committee and the different committee initiatives. So the other committees within the township do this as well. And I think it would be beneficial for council just to get a sense of the different goals and objectives that the Heritage Committee is doing. And it would also be valuable to get their support on that as well.
Okay.
Does anybody in the committee have any comments or concerns about the first line?
Well, I don't think there's any further comments.
Okay, perfect. So we can approve that section then. So the next line on the table is the Doors of Puss Lunch poster. So we will need a subcommittee for this. And then this also comes with budgetary concerns as well. So essentially, whoever's on the subcommittee for this will investigate the cost and funding opportunities. Additionally, they will coordinate the printing, advertising, and sale of the posters. So we can establish the subcommittee during this meeting, and the subcommittee will be needed to provide the next steps at the next committee meeting in April of 2021.
Okay, if I could make a comment on that, Mary, you have the digital copies of the original Doors of Puss Lunch poster, do you not?
Yeah, I do, and I believe the township does as well.
We do.
That's what I was told. Yeah.
Okay.
Hillary, can I ask you, do we have any copyright? How does this work? Because Digital Wizard no longer exists. So where do we stand with copyright on that poster?
I don't think there is any on it, Barb. I may be wrong. I did check with my lawyer, and they thought because the company was defunct, if indeed they had ever actually copyrighted, which doesn't take much, you just have to publish something and really it's copyrighted. Mm-hmm. But they thought it probably would have expired because of the demise of the company. They weren't. I didn't really want to pay for a legal opinion on it because I think it's a relatively minor point, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find anybody, even in the old Ontario government records, there didn't seem to be any trail as to what had happened to the company other than it had its charter had expired and it was no longer active.
Are you comfortable with that, Hillary?
It's something we can look into. I'm not, Courtney, any thoughts on that one?
I think if we establish a subcommittee for that, maybe we can add that to the list of things to clarify when they're kind of looking at their grant opportunities and that sort of thing. Maybe we can add that and have a response perhaps at the next meeting.
Okay, look, can we establish a subcommittee, Mary? You can't take this one on too. Really,
no, I don't need to take this one on.
Good.
I think that the information I have is duplicated in the township office.
Okay.
And if it's not, I'm happy to pull up those files that Marilyn Crowe sent me and forward them to whoever is going to do this.
I'm happy to stick my hand up about this little project as a member of the subcommittee. If anyone else would like to give me a hand to get this thing up and running.
I'll give you a hand with that, John, but
thank you, John.
I'm not sure what the issue is here. I mean, basically we were reprinting an existing poster. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why don't we just reprint the poster?
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Why do we need a subcommittee for this?
Well, I think you and I have just decided that's what we're going to do. Now we have to get a budget for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why we need a subcommittee for it either, but we'll do that. That's.
I mean, we're literally talking about taking a digital file and issuing it to someone who's got print capability and saying we have to order 200 copies of this poster. Is that basically the whole story here?
Yep.
Okay, so why do we need to establish a subcommittee?
Okay,
Did we just
and then,
do it? I mean, that's
If I
one
could,
thing we do, we have to figure out how we're going to distribute these, where they're going to be sold.
yeah, that's right. And if I could address your question, John, on the idea of the subcommittee. So essentially the subcommittee, it kind of gives the Heritage Committee essentially, I guess, ownership over the project, but also it helps to get the projects done as well. So we have all these projects, and it wouldn't be feasible for everybody on the committee to undertake all of these projects. So the subcommittee essentially is a couple of the members of the Heritage Committee get together and ensure that the projects get done. So that's why we've got subcommittees for some and not for others.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Could I just ask a question regarding the budget? Is this already a budget item for 21 Portsmouth Township budget? Or does it fall under our umbrella?
So to answer that, yes, it would be. It wasn't part of what we put forward for the 2021 budget, which is almost completed at this point. So I think if the subcommittee is able to establish a cost for this project, which could include perhaps just printing and distribution of it, we do have the means to advertise it kind of with what we have already in place with Puslynch, the website, and some other things. But if there's any budgetary implications for the printing, we're going to want to make sure that's noted for next year so that we can get them printed and distributed.
For next year, you mean 21?
For 2022. So the budget for 2021 has already been established. So unless we can find some funds, we do have there is a line item for the Heritage Committee for certain administrative things like it's more like for paper or for printing or things like that. We can look at that budget and to see if it could fit under there. But if it doesn't, then we may have to have it planned for 2022.
Okay.
Okay. Next item.
Okay, so the next item we have on the table is the Heritage Registry. So we will also need a subcommittee for that. There's no budget restrictions for or it's not a budget item. So Councillor Balmer has indicated that he would like to be on the subcommittee for the Heritage Registry. So the subcommittee for this project will be established to review the report prepared by staff to create the registry for listed properties. So the committee will advise the committees to advise on public notice options at this meeting, and staff will prepare a report to council, including the listed properties to establish the registry for the March 2021 council meeting.
I have a question about that, Hillary. Is the purpose of that council meeting to adopt the registry or to receive the report of the registry?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, but I believe it's to adopt the registry. So council will have the list that's prepared by the subcommittee, and then they'll approve the registry, and then the registry will be official as at that meeting. It will have formally been adopted by council.
So haven't we spoken about the need to issue letters of to residents and wait for their response? Is that prior to council adopting the registry?
So I can help a little bit. So I think we're trying to put if this report that goes to council in March doesn't ask for adoption through bylaw or through council resolution for the listed registry, then we can bring a report forward to council at that meeting with the recommendations from the committee. So we could recommend to council that we'd like to have a registry of listed properties. We could recommend to them that this is the process for public notification that we would like to, kind of the approach we'd like to take. And we could seek council's endorsement at the March meeting and then bring a report back after that. I think staff has just put this as more of a high priority simply because we don't have a registry with these properties. We did get a demo permit. We don't want to miss out on being able to protect. So we can be flexible about what that report is in March, but I think we want to put it on council's radar as soon as possible.
And may I ask which is there a date in March, or is there a specific date in the March?
Yes, so the normal council meetings are held on the first and third Wednesday of the month. We're just re-looking at that schedule right now over COVID. So I don't have an exact date, just dependent on what council chooses for the schedule.
Okay. And then because I'm expecting to be involved in the subcommittee, once we get that committee together, if we could put together a list of due dates for getting this to council at that meeting. In other words, does it have to go to council 2 weeks before the council meeting, or a month, or how does that work?
So the council package is posted the Friday before. So if it's on the Wednesday, we post it the Friday before.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good time in the first meeting of the subcommittee to discuss timelines like you've indicated.
Yeah, and if I can ask another question, would it be appropriate for this committee to meet just to have the committee as a whole review that list? Or can we do that somehow through some kind of, email or communication? Or is that important? I don't know if the subcommittee is sufficient enough and to put this forward without a motion by the whole committee.
So I guess we could do it one of two ways. We could move a motion at this meeting to have the subcommittee be granted or delegated authority over the registry. And in that way, we're kind of giving them the okay to finalize the registry. Alternatively, we could bring it forward to the April meeting for the committee to look at, which kind of causes a bit of a delay. And I guess the third opportunity would be to hold a special meeting of the committee perhaps maybe at the beginning of March.
Anyone got any comments on that? I mean, I personally I'd like to delegate this and get it done. And I think if Mary and Matt are involved, and Barb, if you'd like to be involved, I mean, you people really do.
I would.
You have the in-depth knowledge, and if the three of you come up with the, you review what staff has done, et cetera, I'm more than happy that you move ahead with it and that we pass a resolution empowering you to do so. John, any comments?
No, I agree with you on that fully.
Okay.
Okay.
So then if I could just, Hillary, if you want to make a note in that section of the chart that the committee would delegate the authority to the subcommittee to finalize the register before it goes to council. That way, when you pass the resolution, that's captured in there in the minutes.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments or concerns with this item in the table? Okay, so we can move on to the next section, which would be heritage signage. So that will also require a subcommittee, and it would be something that's included in the budget. So the subcommittee is to be established to create a listing of potential landmarks. The subcommittee will investigate the potential funding and opportunities for the landmark signage. And we weren't sure about sort of a timeline for this. We wanted to get the heritage committee's sort of input on this, as we have lots of other projects that are ongoing. So whatever you guys think is appropriate is what I can mark down here.
Hillary, if you can help. Sorry, John, can I just jump in here?
No, I just said Barb. I saw your hand move.
Yeah. So Hillary and Courtney, I think this item works tidily with. I don't have it on my fingertips, but there was an email that Mary Hahn sent out regarding signage in the core when we were doing some of the signage through Aberfoyle and Morriston, and we had letters from people wondering why additional heritage signage wasn't included in that. So is there an ongoing committee that's already looking at signage for Portsmouth Township? Or is that completed?
Barb, I can help with that. We did follow up in last year when you inquired. So it's the signage master plan that was undertaken, and it was it included some historical signage. I think there was a historical corner block sign and some major landmarks in the township that did receive some recognition through that signage master plan. So I did bring it up with it's no longer an active committee. So I did bring it up with the Director of Finance and the Director of Public Works, and they both indicated that this was not part of that signage master plan, and that if we were looking for kind of additional funding for signage, that we would likely have to look for grants or propose it to council as part of the budget process in a future year.
Okay, so then basically this is an entirely new project then. Heritage landscape landmark signage would be an entirely new project for the Heritage Committee.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not discuss the refurbishment of certain existing signs several meetings ago? I thought there was a bit of a budget provided for that, particularly signs going down Highway 6 at the, I guess the old schoolhouse in there. Nothing ever came of that, did it?
The correspondence that that I'm thinking of from the Historical Society and from Councillor Sarah Bailey before she was a councillor, all of those things were brought to the attention of the Heritage Committee. But if I'm understanding Courtney correctly, they were not part of that master plan. Yes, indeed, there was talk of replacing a sign in Morriston, a handmade wooden sign that is now in disrepair. And there was pre-councillor recommended some not landscape, but landmarks, similar to some of the signs that are posted around like Loch Buoy and some of the signs that had been put up by the Historical Society several years ago. So definitely there's interest in this, but it was appear that all of that was under the radar of the signage master plan.
Okay. So we need to sort of reactivate this or activate it and take some decisions on it ourselves as to what we're going to do to go forward with heritage signing. Is that what I understand?
Mm-hmm. Is there a timeline for this?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mary, that's what I was discussing about earlier. If the Heritage Committee could prepare a timeline for this, that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a timeline, and we need to arrive at some sort of cost estimate so that we can go forward with the budgetary process, because even if we decided today, it would be difficult to get signage prepared within the next 8-9 months. So it probably will end up being a 2022 item. Is that correct?
That sounds good. I can note that under the status update / timeline section. That's
okay.
To be prepared. John, are you thinking at the beginning of 2022?
Well, I'm thinking if we establish a timeline between now and even our next meeting, and Mary and Barb, you both know these sites probably better than anyone. Well, probably Matt knows where a lot of them are. I guess there's two phases. We want to refurbish the existing signs that are in disrepair. And do we want to identify additional sites that we would like to see signage on and get some sort of an estimate as to what the cost of putting that signage in place would be?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Barb.
I feel I feel that there's several items of discussion here. We do have commentary again from a citizen, Andrea Norton and John Gilmore, requesting signage for the original Black Farm property that was donated to the community center. We have talked about plaques, awareness plaques around various parks that we have and landscapes. And this also ties into like the settlement signs. It's interesting, this township has interesting signage. Like when you drive down 34, you know when you're in Aikinsville, you know when you're in Killeen. But if you go down Watson, it's a handmade sign that local residents put up designating Badna. There's no consistency. And I don't know why. I don't know where the history of those signs. I don't know where they came from. So I think this subcommittee is an excellent idea, but I think there are several projects here that need to be ranked by priority, and also consistency across the township. So I think this is a great idea. I do not see this happening in early 2022. I would say, particularly when you might have to be applying for grants and you might have to be applying for community input. So I see more of this as a project of prioritizing and going forward mid-2022, Hillary.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
no, I agree with you. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Barb. And I think I'm not sure who mentioned the timeline. That really is it. We've got to prioritize and basically draw a timeline chart. Okay, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. Now I'm wondering whether this is actually, I think, a fairly important item. At least I think it's important to have good heritage signage. I'm wondering if a subcommittee really is appropriate, or whether it shouldn't be a committee of the whole, because this covers a wide spectrum of needs and wants and desires, I think. Yes, Barb.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a suggestion, I would suggest that a subcommittee be formed, and the initial responsibility of that committee would be to prioritize heritage landmark signage, and that committee bring it back to the committee as a whole to ensure that we have consensus from our full committee, and that also we're on track for how we interpret what this heritage landmark signage actually means.
Yes, I think that's very well said. Any comments, Mary,
yeah,
John?
Barb and Mary, do either of you or both of you have maybe a general idea of how many venues we're talking about here? Like, are we talking about a dozen places, or are we talking about a couple of hundred?
I think that's what the subcommittee will come to terms with, John. Initially, what one has to do is simply an inventory of existing signs and places that warrant signage.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot in this process, which is why I think a subcommittee is a really good way to work, because they tend to work a little bit more quickly with a task, and I think we'll find that out. There are many options in terms of this project, and we may come up with different forms of signage for different types of landscapes or properties or whatever, but that remains to be determined.
Okay, can you just give me one example of a venue that you would be familiar with now that is not signed, that needs to be signed? I'm just trying to picture this. Just one, any one you can think of.
Well, you know, as we speak, I'm thinking of actually of multiple venues. I think that for instance, the village of Morriston is signed, but it's not signed in any historical context at all.
Okay.
There's nothing in that little parquet that provides heritage information about that community anywhere.
So Mary, this goes back to your original comments about establishing provenance. This all ties together, I think, because it's a very good point that you raise. Putting a sign up without any historical continuity or a little story attached to it, well, it's kind of a waste of money.
Well,
it's not going to interest anybody.
I won't spend a lot of time talking about this, except to say we have ample resources to do this well in terms of visual material. And so it's not unusual. I've talked about interpretive signage before, and I've even come up with budget figures around it for certain locations to have a visual of a streetscape from a certain time period that provides viewers with a sense of the change in that streetscape and its origins. There's a lots of potential here to be discussed as a subcommittee, I think. And I'm really pleased that this is a way to go forward with this.
Okay, so we do have a base to start with. We do have a list of things. That's super.
I mean, there's everything from interpretive panels down to QR codes, where people just use their iPhone on a building and find out its history. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying there's a lot that can be done, and we may come up with multiple options.
Okay, as we drive around the general countryside outside of Puslinch, there's all kinds of places that would be comparable to Morriston. You've got Elora, places like that. Can you think of one place that's actually already done this?
Yes.
Okay, what would that
be? You mean anywhere, or?
Yeah, anywhere. Who's ever done this before?
Well, I talk about this a lot, so I'm surprised you can't remember, John, but in the summers I go to a small fishing village in decline in Nova Scotia, and they have interpretive panels as part of a historic walk through this village. And they have 3 that are probably, I would say 30 inches by 40 inches. And they show, past and present, and they interpret that landscape. One is looking out over the harbor, one is looking out over the beach, one is looking out over the main street. Kingston, Ontario does this very well. Let me think. You see it in natural parks all the time. And, Parks Canada does it, with little pictures of serpents and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's many areas to do this.
I know when I was in Bayfield last year, they had some excellent interpretive signage in the sort of reconstructed town center area, which had depictions of what the town looked like 100 years ago. John, you remember when we were in Ottawa, the market had signage around it, which kind of indicated its history and it told a bit of a story about it, things along that line. I mean, I don't think there's any problem getting examples of it. My interest was more what do we have in our files now that gives us a starting point to start literally, as you just said, driving around and saying, right, that area, here's the provenance behind it, here's the story behind it. that deserves a roadside plaque, whatever is decided. And I agree with Mary. I think that it doesn't all have to be the same by any means. It can be
okay. I'm just thinking of the logistics of this here. Like Mary talking about Kingston. Okay, well, Kingston is basically a city with a location down by the waterfront where the signage would be. And it would be that location only where you would see that. And like the fishing village one you're talking about in, was it Nova Scotia?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that those two common, and John, the one you're talking about in Ottawa, all three places have in common, is that these are places where people gather to walk around and look at the sites. Now I'm looking at Puslinch here. Puslinch is a collection basically of small highways. I can't picture where people walk around in Puslinch. Morriston, maybe, but it's a long shot. I mean, that is a road that's full of 45-foot trucks all day long. Where in Puslinch is somebody going to actually walk around and want to read a sign?
Well, that's what we'll...
Give me one example of that. I'm just trying to think of the logistics.
Yeah, John, I think that's what the subcommittee will figure out. There are places that people gather. So maybe the subcommittee will say, well, let's start where people are already gathering. Okay. And traditionally, those are historic locations. Like there's, I mean, by the community center in Aberfoyle, like there's ways to do this. And all of these, computations will be sorted.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to consider the logistics of it. I'm just trying to keep it real, because Puslinch is in Kingston, and it's not Ottawa, and it's certainly not the fishing village in Nova Scotia either. So if we're going to...
It's a collection of villages. It is a collection of villages. And if I can just say one more thing, I think, optimally, what we like are location identifiers for either visitors or residents, something that grounds what they're seeing as they move through our community. And, I think we've talked about cyclists using the township. We've talked about cultural tourism. All of this requires some kind of wayfaring, something to identify where they are and why there's value in that place. And I think that's what we're trying to do. It's not necessarily a simple thing, but it should be done.
If I could add a comment, Mr. Chair. John, I appreciate the plaquing and identification landscape markers that have been done by private organizations. So if I look at Ellis Chapel, there's a beautiful bronze plaque that explains the history of Ellis Chapel. If I look in the hamlet of Arkle, the Women's Institute has done a great job in briefly documenting in bronze the history of Arkle. I think we could do a better job at Puslinch Lake. There are identifiers there. Some of them are special, the old marina, things like that. But I think we can do a better job, and I think we can try and be consistent across the various settlements in Puslinch. If nothing else, Badna, a Scottish community established 1854. Just those types of historical markers. And I think it recognizes the heritage of the community and lends to our diversity. But I think there is potential for consistency. And I do appreciate the individual organizations that have already initiated this and set the bar high. And I think if we're ever, maybe I'd have to look at our mandate again, but if tourism and recognition is part of the goal of Puslinch Township, then I do think it's something that we need to investigate, if only at the subcommittee level. And we may find that as we investigate this, as we find out what funds are available, we may have to limit our scope substantially to come up with something that just gives us a few more identifiers in the township. How am I doing?
Yes.
Very good.
Did I convince you?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Who's
Chair.
going
May I
to-
comment?
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, Matt. Hello, Matthew.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm so late, but I'm glad I came in during this discussion, and I want to echo what I heard from. I share Mr. Levac's concerns. Certainly, we're not Kingston, we're not Ottawa, but we are Puslinch. And what Barb just mentioned and what Mary was mentioning, there are places where people gather. Answer some of my calls I receive about parking complaints in the township, and I can give you the names of the places where people gather. So, you know, we can broaden our horizons, and I think she gave a great example of the plaque that the province provided for Ellis Chapel. I think that's a great model. I think that's what Mary's been speaking of in the past. We come up with, even if it's a single storytelling marker at a place. I've walked several of the tracts in the township and often wondered, how did this formerly private property become public property? The story of Little Tract, I believe, is on a rock or on a plaque there at the Little Tract. Starkey Hill could have one. She said Puslinch Lake could have one. Badna Tract, McLean Tract, the Vance Tract, the Bond Tract. Who are these people behind these names? This is natural heritage, and I think each one of them, we could be busy for years preparing these sorts of elements. So I think there's opportunities. They may be small. They may not be where people gather all at once in hundreds, but they certainly use these places hundreds over the year. So I wouldn't want to lose sight that they have opportunities here.
Cool.
Okay, is there anybody that would like to be on this committee or the subcommittee?
Well,
I would, Hillary.
Yeah. And,
Okay, so Barb, Mary?
and yeah.
We would be using Matthew as a resource. Is that okay?
Well, how
Councillor
many
Bowman?
do you need? How many do you need on the subcommittee?
We don't currently have a limit, so if you'd like to be on it, Councillor Ballmer, you're more than welcome.
I will try, see how that goes. This would be for marking heritage locations. This is part of the, I guess, an extension of the existing signing project the township is doing.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, first of all, identifying them, Matt, and you've got a wealth of knowledge of the history of areas that we might be able to narrow the decision making down. I mean, there's lots of places that probably qualify, but we don't have unlimited money, and we don't have, I guess we do have unlimited time, but we don't have unlimited money. So I think prioritizing them is going to be very important.
I like this idea that then if you leave it the subcommittee to come up with a list and leave the whole committee to prioritize them, and it gives us something to work away at over the years. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Super. Okay. So we have Barb and Mary and ex officio Matt for the subcommittee. Is that correct?
Okay, that's correct.
Okay.
Could I just clarify a statement there? Matthew, would this be an extension of the existing committee, or this would be something entirely separate?
Well, I think what I understand it's be a subcommittee of this committee. We would report back to the Heritage Committee. It's part
My apologies. I thought you were referring to the signage master plan.
Oh, it's part of I can see it selling it to council as an extension of that project in terms of we've identified the buildings of interest, and we want to use that same sign pattern and logos and things, identifying these of heritage interest. It's just continuing on the idea of identifying the place.
Understood.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments or concerns about the heritage signage line within this chart?
No, I think everybody's good.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on. The next item that we have are old school surveys. We found this in some of the old minutes from the Heritage Committee. We weren't sure sort of what they were or if they needed a subcommittee. So I'll let the committee comment on that if that's something that the committee wants to pursue.
What do we mean by old school surveys? Hillary? Is this the positioning of old schools that are now gone, except in faded memory?
I'm not entirely sure, John. Sorry about that. It was, yes, a line that we had found in one of the old minutes. It just briefly mentioned old school surveys, and we weren't sure if either what that was or if that was something that was important to the Heritage Committee.
Maybe, want me to I can maybe speak to this.
Sure.
If this was found in the minutes in the last 2 years or so, was it?
Yeah.
So I'll just refresh the committee's memory. While staff was doing a tidying of the township office, standing in a corner, they found a survey of the school sections done early 1900s, late 1800s. Whenever the school sections were surveyed, it was the original survey of the school sections. It was the same year at which the Badina Community Center was being transferred back to the county, and the management of it was, the Badina Community Center board became the Badina Community Center Association. They incorporated as a not-for-profit to handle the daily management of that facility. And so at that time, I borrowed that survey from the township and had a full-size duplicate done to present to the Badina Community Center board or association at their inaugural meeting as a not-for-profit. So they could display it. They'd have a copy that they could display there. And I could be the survey they're talking about. I don't believe this is the project that the Historical Society did with all the presentations of the 6 school boards. So perhaps the question for us is, what do we do with this survey that we still have? The township still has the original survey. What should we do with it?
Gotcha. Yes. Thanks, Matt. That clears that up, at least clears it up. I was thinking we would be looking at doing something such as they do in Saskatchewan, where there was literally a one-room schoolhouse about every square mile or two. And they're now honored with a black iron arch saying what was there because it's long gone. I was thinking, oh no, this is something the Heritage Committee is going to have, the Signage Committee is going to have to look at, subcommittee is going to have to look at. But it's the actual physical piece of paper that you found and had reproduced. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the township still has the original. I brought it back. It's still, the staff should have it somewhere in-house. It's just, the question from staff was, what do we do with it now? Should it go to the archives? Would the county archives want it? Do we want to continue to be responsible for it? Do we want to display it prominently? Thinking of our signing project, is it something that we can use to inform that? It's a historic document, just what we do with it.
Yeah, we don't throw it out.
What does,
So any suggestions, Mary?
So Hillary, what is the information management system that the township uses for its own documents?
So the township, we don't have a formal information management system. We've got all of our documents listed in an Excel spreadsheet, and then the locations of the documents at the township. So we don't have too many physical documents saved to the township, but that is how we do list them.
Mm-hmm. Because I know that the Puslinch Archives, which is operated by the Historical Society, has copies of township records and so on and so forth. And maybe that's a good location for these, except they were township produced, weren't they? Because the schools were under the jurisdiction of the township at that time. So I guess my point is perhaps they should go to the Wellington County Museum because it's government operated and it's a professional archive.
Could we digitize that map? Do we have facilities to do a piece of paper that large, or is it a large piece of paper?
Yeah, we don't have the capacity here. I took it to a place that did proper blueprint size photocopying. So I think I only got one copy done, but it could be done again. It was delicate to roll it out to get it copied.
John, if I could suggest that once COVID permits, if they're donated to the Wellington County Archives, one can arrange for them to produce a digital copy. That's what they do. Yep. And that could be a condition of, well, that could be a request on donation.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I think your suggestion is a good one. They do have the proper storage facilities. It is rather important with paper documents that they be properly stored because they do tend to disintegrate. I think that's a great suggestion.
And I can also reach out. I'll look up the records of where I had it done. They likely still have it. It was a digital photocopier anyway. They likely have a digital. They can print another one if we wanted it.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Any further comments on the old school survey?
Okay, so just for the minutes, the old school survey will be donated to the Wellington County Archives, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I will mark that down. All right, so our next item is the review of the Heritage Committee terms of reference and appoint chair and vice chair every 2 years. So this is also included at the bottom of the agenda. So we don't need a subcommittee for that. There's no budget item for that. And as I said, it's attached as part of the agenda as the last item there. And we can do this now if the committee would like. So my question for the committee, so I know from Lynn that a chair and vice chair was appointed last year. So that would be Barb and John. Does the committee wish to appoint a new chair and vice chair? So as I understand it in terms of reference, this is something that's done every 2 years. So I know last year there was it did differ, sort of went off the 2-year schedule. So my question for the committee is, does the committee wish to appoint a new chair and vice chair for the remainder of the term? So for the 2021 to the 2022 term, or is the committee fine with John and Barb resuming the positions of chair and vice chair for the remainder of the term?
I'm certainly fine with that.
Matt?
I'm okay with that.
Mary?
Yes.
Okay, so noted.
Okay, perfect. We will move that. Does the committee members have any comments or changes that they would like to make to the terms of reference?
Anyone have any comments? And we'll take that as a no.
Well, I have just.
Oh, okay, Matt. Got to speak up.
Thank you. I have just one. I don't have an issue with how they are now, but it would relate to, as I shared a note with the chair in case I couldn't make the meeting. I don't believe we've had the discussion about the territorial acknowledgement, but I would like to revisit this question about the terms of reference as part of the discussion of the territorial acknowledgement.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we've got a section. We've got a section on that, Councillor Balmer, yes, towards the end of the chart, so we can discuss that there if you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any other comments or concerns before we move on to the next section of the table?
Okay.
All right, perfect. So next we have public engagement regarding the Heritage Committee and its mandate. So we will need a subcommittee for this. As of right now, we don't have, there's nothing to report to the budget. So we would establish a subcommittee at this meeting just to gauge some potential engagement options. So some options that we do have for engagement as of right now, include the township website. We've also got, I'm not sure if any of you have taken a look at it yet. We've got Engage Puslinch, which is done through this company Bang the Table. It's another option to engage with the public on there. We've also got the Puslinch Pioneer, the Puslinch Community Newsletter, and we've also got heritage articles for the Puslinch Pioneer. So the subcommittee would work with me, the secretary, regarding any potential engagement opportunities, and they would report back at the July 2021 meeting. Is there anybody?
Yeah, if I could make a comment, our resident writer, being Mary Tivy, who does a superb job. I'm not being patronizing here at all. Mary, I really appreciate your little pearls of wisdom that come through the Puslinch Pioneer, which we read fastidiously every time it comes out. You do an absolutely great job on that. And I think, for one, I'd really like to see you continue doing that and assist in the public engagement, because you do a great job.
All right, thank you. I'm happy to do that.
Anybody else like to get involved with the public engagement side of what we do?
I just had a question of staff. Has staff had an opportunity to explain to the committee what Bang the Table is and how it could be used by the Heritage Committee, or some examples of how it could benefit the Heritage Committee?
That's an excellent point, Councillor Balmer. We haven't discussed that yet, but I think that would be a great time. So if you go to engagepuslinch.ca, that's our website where Bang the Table is. And essentially what Bang the Table is, it's a way for the township to engage with the community. And the way that the township can engage with the community, the platform allows for a variety of different ways. So right now, currently on the website, we have a photo petition. Township residents can submit photos in the various different categories. And also one of the categories we have as well is heritage. So it might be a great way to display some of the wonderful heritage properties that we have here at the township. And also currently we have a good news story section as well. So the good news story section allows residents to post any good news stories that have been happening, as it's been a tough year. So we figured it would be a great way for residents to sort of uplift each other. So the idea essentially is that the platform can be used to engage with the residents through, and it's not just pictures and stories, it could be polls, or you could add different stories as well. So there's lots of different potential for that. So if anybody in the committee has an idea of something they would like to post to the website, we can absolutely make that happen.
So just a follow-up question then. Much of what you described sounds not similar to the existing website. Does the Engage Puslinch part allow for two-way communications on every subject, or just on specific items?
I believe it's every subject. So with the Bang the Table, the company also has moderators as well. So it wouldn't just be staff moderating it. So if there was a discussion that the Heritage Committee wanted to pose to the community, it would also be moderated by Bang the Table as well. But to answer your question, yes, staff would, they can also respond to things on there as well.
Great. So unlike the website, which is one way where stuff only goes out to the residents, this piece allows the residents to communicate with the committee.
I'm not too sure. Courtney, can you help me on that one?
With each other?
So I believe that it would be with staff. I'm not sure if we would have the committee respond back, just given the access to behind the scenes the site, but certainly Hillary, being the secretary of the committee, could respond back and bring any questions to the committee if she needed some help.
But then those communications would be viewed, but you could see publicly that correspondence back and forth, so people could see questions asked and answers given.
Oh yes, exactly. And one project that comes to mind for the committee would possibly be the public engagement piece for the registry, to be able to maybe answer some of those questions like Mary had brought up. If there was any concerns, common misconceptions with the Heritage Registry and what that means, I think Bang the Table would be an excellent place to do that.
Thank you.
All right, so I've currently got Mary listed on the subcommittee. Would anybody else like to be on the subcommittee?
I'll give Mary a hand with this.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, John.
Can I, John, can I, through you, who operates pusslingetoday.ca?
I'm not
that
sure.
website.
I'm not sure.
It's not the township, correct?
That's correct. It's not the township, and it has no affiliation with the real, you know, Guelph Today or Woodstock Today or any of the other Todays. It's two residents of the township that run it as a little private business.
And the goal of Engage Puslinch is to have a dialogue around, in a sort of celebratory, is that the right word, sense of the community. I notice you have to register to participate in Engage Puslinch. How many registrants are there? Do you know?
Sorry, Mary. Not sure off the top of my head, but that is something that we can look at later for how many people are registered. But you're right. The idea behind the Engage Puslinch is to not necessarily. It can be celebratory, but it's to engage the residents of Puslinch with the staff as well, and it's something to keep that dialogue open and inform people of what's going on with the township in sort of a different way.
Mm-hmm. So, well, John, you and I can also look at other venues for public engagement. You know, anyway. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Next item.
Okay, so the next item we have is committee training. So there's no subcommittee for this. There would be a line on the budget for that. So essentially what that would be is the secretary, which again is myself, would be looking into training opportunities for the committee. And that's something that I can report back on at the next quarterly meeting, so in April.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And sorry.
Yep.
There. Do we have a budget allowance for that, Hillary?
I believe we do. So there is a certain, budget allowance for that.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item we have is the preparation of the Heritage Advisory Committee orientation package to new members of council and any new committee members. So this one does need a subcommittee. There's no line on the budget for that. And the subcommittee can be established in October of 2021, and they can work with me to develop any orientation materials.
Okay. John, through you. Hillary, when is the next municipal election?
So it would be in 2022, I believe.
2022, okay.
So it's not something that we need right away, but it is something that we would need for next year.
I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, I'd put my hat in on that one too.
Okay, and John. Perfect. So if anybody doesn't have any comments or concerns with that one, we can move on to the next point, which would be the plaquing program. So we also need a subcommittee for that. It would be something that would be included on the budget. So the subcommittee to be established to identify the number and location of plaques each year to be included in the annual budget process. The subcommittee to be established at this meeting, January 2021, to have the number and location of plaques provided to the committee and secretary no later than the July meeting, and then on an annual basis.
Could I open this up for broader discussion, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
Just even the question of whether this is a subcommittee function or this should remain as a core, function of the committee, of the whole committee, if that's fair to put that question on the table for consideration.
I think it is. Any comments?
I think that if I can comment, John,
Of course.
Frequently, the planning discussions come after site visits in the summer, and we're a small committee as a whole, and we visit these sites as a whole, and it seems to me that the committee as a whole could manage this recommendation. Yeah.
Matt, any comment?
That's my opinion.
No, good one, as always. Matt, do you any comment?
No, maybe I was stepping on staff's toes there, but I just thought this is the part that I know that the committee enjoys the most. As I hear the committee getting more and more work to do, I didn't want to take away the part they enjoy the most and assigning it to just a sub piece. So.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I think Mary's point makes great sense. I greatly enjoy our field trip every year, and I would support that idea that this remain a committee of the whole on this part of the project. Barb, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts, and thank you, Councillor Walmer, for your comment about more work we're getting. I believe as fallout from these visits that we enjoy so much, on the table, we do have a few write-ups and descriptions to do already. So we seem to have generated, we have a backlog of work to do, identifying potential locations for future plaquing. So I would like to keep this as a discussion that's with the entire committee. For that reason, I think from some of our summer visits, we need to revisit those ones where we've made the comment that we would like to plaque them, or this is an area of interest, to identify more clearly as a committee going forward what properties we're interested in.
Thanks, Barb. Any further comment?
I agree with Mary and Barb there. I think this is a full committee item for sure. But just to extend that a little, I think at some point we're going to have to really start discussing the nature of site visits moving forward. It's pretty clear based on COVID, we're not doing one this year. And the question becomes in future years, will we be able to do site visits at all? Will there possibly be a municipal rule that's thrown in with a bunch of other post-COVID rules that might prohibit us from ever doing that again? And, you know, I think it becomes a forest and trees discussion. And, you know, based on where, you know, I'm kind of seeing this whole evolution of our society going, I'm really wondering if this part of what we do will ever be the same again.
Mm-hmm.
My first guess would be it won't.
Any further comments from any other members? By the way, John Levac and I have discussed this as private citizens, and I think we concur that the world as we knew it is not going to be the same. It may go back, but it's going to take a long time. And I'm wondering whether this is an item, whether we should just defer this until we see where the dust is going to settle. I'd hate to make a decision now and find out 6 months, 8 months, a year from now that we made the wrong decision. Or we made a decision that we can't follow up on, I should say. There's not going to be a wrong or a right decision. Whether we can actually do it. Any comments? Matt, do you have any comments on this, please?
No, I think everything I heard is correct. Things may change, they may be different, they may be similar, but I'll tell you what's going through my head as we're having this discussion. You know, at the meeting this morning, you know, the county is licensing a enterprise level GIS system. I think I can use those terms with this committee. You guys all know what GIS is with our properties. And it opens the opportunity when we have those kind of resources brought to bear that we're going to be able to have access to, that we could be looking at virtual site visits, virtual tours. There's all sorts of things that become available and a different way of doing these things, but it doesn't mean we stop. The core process of this is the what are the ranking of them, as John is always trying to get us to go back to, and I'm glad he does. That at some point we have to, rank these, and whether that is going to be a physical site visit or a virtual site visit in the future, that's to be determined. But the core function is still determining which ones get plaqued and which ones don't, and that's the piece I want to keep at the committee level. Perhaps the site visits become a one person with a camera or two people. That's the change, but the core function remains of ranking them I think still needs to remain at the whole committee. So
thanks, Matt.
All right, I've made a note within the table that the committee would like to keep this as a whole, and that they recommend that there is no subcommittee for this. So that's good. Is everybody okay to move on to the next item on the table?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, perfect. And Councillor Balmer sort of led into that. So the next item is the heritage property visits. Is this something that the committee would like to have as a subcommittee? And as we mentioned before, this would just be a list of potential properties to visit. And this is going to be delayed until it's safe to resume due to the COVID-19 situation.
Anyone have any comments on that?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if possibly at this time, this particular objective might be something that we can just shelve for this year. I feel we've got a lot going on here, and recognizing that it is something that we want to do, but until we come up with a format that's going to have to comply with township regulations and suggestions, I'm going to say that I think we should just set this aside until we get through this current COVID crisis.
Thanks, Barb. I concur. I think we should defer this until we know a little better where we're going and how we might possibly get there.
Absolutely. We have no choice.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, perfect. I've made a note of that as well on the table, that this will be deferred until COVID-19 is, I guess, better managed. So the next item that we have on the table is to document and acknowledge First Nation sites and heritage. So we will need a subcommittee for that. There is no budget for that, and the objective is to establish a subcommittee at the January 2021 meeting, and the subcommittee to create a list of sites and heritage. And then the subcommittee, we recommend to report back at the October 2021 meeting.
John, Chair, I'm happy to sit on that committee.
I would like to as well.
Okay.
And I'm happy to sit on that committee as well. It's an item that I have great interest in.
Perfect. So I've got Mary Tivey, Councillor Balmer, and John Arnold on this committee.
Correct. Well, I don't have to. I didn't hear from John. I maybe jumped in before I should have on that one. Would Mr. Levack like to do that?
No, I'm good with you there, Matt. I think you have a little better background than me on that one.
Okay.
And also note for the committee as well that this is also something that the county is working on.
Yeah, and so earlier on I mentioned that I wanted to revisit the terms of reference when we discussed this piece as well.
Yes.
It's thanks to Mary that I see the value of these. Mary shared with me an article that she had prepared that hasn't been published yet, and it references the territorial acknowledgement that the University of Guelph adopted. And one of my biggest concerns about these territorial acknowledgements is when they're spoken and nothing changes. And I want to make sure that, if our work plan includes working towards developing a territorial acknowledgement for the township, I want to make sure that as part of doing that, we also make sure that we need something, or we've changed nothing, because I don't want to end up in a situation where our committee's function is one of creating monuments to colonization, and then we read out this thing to make us feel good. But I'd want to be in a position where we actually do something that reflects the values of the territorial acknowledgement that we adopt. So I would like to connect the terms of reference and the role of the committee to be sort of reviewing that in the after, you know, so that it's consistent with the territorial acknowledgement that we finally adopt, if that makes sense.
John, our chair, can I ask Matt, will we wait until the county prepares one? I know the county's, is it not currently preparing a territorial land acknowledgement statement?
That's correct, Mary. So that's the last item in the table is the land acknowledgement statement. So the County of Wellington is currently developing that. And we don't have a date on that, as that's still something that they're working on.
Okay. I'm sorry, did that seem cogent to what to Matt's question or comment?
I guess all I was looking for is I just wanted to add one more item to the list, in that the terms of reference and the role of the committee be updated. I'd like to have that as an action item, be updated to be consistent with the territorial acknowledgement. So it comes on the list after the territorial acknowledgement, just to recognize that we're willing to do the work or make some effort or improve our understanding, so it's not a hollow acknowledgement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councillor Balmer. I've got that listed on the table as well.
What if the committee doesn't like my idea?
No, Matt, I do like your idea, and your point is extremely well taken. There's an awful lot of words thrown out and nothing happens, and it's really just platitudes. I mean, if the county comes out with a format that they're happy with, are we necessarily going to follow their format? We may not be happy with it. I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. That I think your point's really well taken, that we want to be very comfortable that we're not just mouthing platitudes.
Perhaps staff can find out from the county whether they're doing it on behalf of all member municipalities, and their expectation is that we all use the same. But at the same time, I don't know, this is the thing, I don't know enough about it to say whether we should all have the same or we shouldn't. And that's part of my wanting to be trained and understand, you know, what Mary's article started me on this journey of wanting to understand and move towards reconciliation.
If I can speak to this. In terms of First Nations territorial land occupation in Wellington County, Puslinch is actually distinct. And so depends on how specific that territorial statement is. And on the other hand, it appears that Councillor Don McKay is quite involved in doing this, and he is from Puslinch. So, you know, those are just observations.
Would it be worthwhile, I know Don quite well, would it be worthwhile reaching out to him and asking, you know, where are you going with this thing? Can we give us a bit of a heads up, give us some guidance? I mean, is that stepping outside, or would that be stepping on someone's toes or stepping outside of the protocols that are being followed? Yes,
John, well, I sort of did that. In the the process of preparing an article for the Pioneer that did not get published on this topic, I did speak to Don about what the county was doing. And I would say they're still in process. But in terms of Puss Lynch, the neutral, what are called the neutral First Nations are unique to this township within this county. And they're very important historically and culturally. They're very, very important. So I don't know if that county acknowledgement will include that component or not, but ours certainly would need to.
It's just another note. So staff we can check with the county and report back to the committee on the progress of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Hillary. I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody else have any comments or anything on anything in this table before we wrap this up with a resolution?
Barb?
Mr. Chair, I would really like to thank staff for this document. This is an exceptional document, and it's so great to see everything just in black and white outlined so clearly. I appreciate the work that you did going into it, and it certainly defines the work that we need to do to stay on track. I particularly like the dates and the status component, so letting us know when these documents are due. A committee like this, who only meets 4 times a year, it's difficult for us to stay on track and to get these things established and to ensure the council is aware of what we're doing. So again, I thank you very much for this. It's very helpful.
Thanks, Barb. Awesome. Yeah, I think your comments are dead on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we appreciate that, Barb. Thank you. We're very excited for this. All right, so John, if it's okay with you, I'm going to read the resolution out to the committee.
Please.
I have one question before we go.
Oh, yep.
Did I get on the registry committee, subcommittee?
You did, Councillor Balmer. I made sure that you were included on that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, so we have resolution 2021-002 that the Heritage Committee's goals and objectives for 2021 to 2022 be received, and that the Heritage Committee delegate authority to the Heritage Registry Subcommittee to create the Heritage Registry on behalf of the committee to be sent to council, and that the committee approves the Heritage Committee goals and objectives for the remainder of the committee term, being 2021-2022 as detailed in the chart.
Do I have a, will we have that move, please?
I so move.
Thanks, Mary. Seconder?
Second.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Barb. All in favor? Aye. Mm-hmm. Carried unanimously. Okay, I guess, where are we here?
That's warrant item 10.2, placking cemeteries, and it's a verbal report by Mary Tivey.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got to take my glasses off to read these days. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. Mary, would you report on your cemetery placking project?
Sure. I have, you know, when we went into the midst of COVID, I decided I would look at places where people were already dead. And and I mean, that sounds, I'm sorry if that sounds a bit disrespectful, but I also wanted to profile the cemeteries in Puss Lynch Township. And as I began to do that, I realized what an incredible heritage resource they are. And so through the Pioneer, I'm publishing in bits and pieces articles that deal with components of cemetery heritage, and that includes funerary art. It includes demography, who's in there and how and why. I'm looking now at mortality. I'm going to look at tombstone masons in the township, ultimately leading to an article about these landscapes as heritage landscapes. And I know I've said this before, but as I do this work, I do realize how significant they really are and how overlooked they are. So I'll continue to do that unless there's objections from this committee. I find it fascinating, frankly.
Comments, anyone? If I could make a comment, Mary, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really, we've got a massive history sitting right there in front of us. Really appreciate your work on this, and I think it should lead to some interesting discoveries, quite frankly.
I'll just say that in the next piece that's coming out, I've been asked to keep my articles a bit shorter, but I'm looking at infant and child mortality and the percentage of gravestones that belong to children, which is 30%. And even that information isn't available through any published records, primary published records, because they didn't have death certificates prior to 1869. And, unless you look through family histories, you're not going to get a complete picture. Now, this is just part of primary information, but yeah, I think it's interesting.
Thank you, Mary. Any further comments? You're still up, Mary, by the way. You're the next item. Mary did it.
Before we get to that, John, we've just got a resolution to read. So we've got resolution.
Need a resolution for that?
Yeah, every item, John, unfortunately.
Okay, all right, okay. Not arguing, just curious.
Okay, so we've got resolution 2021-003, that the verbal report regarding blocking cemeteries by Mary Tivy be received for information.
I'll move.
Seconded. All in favor?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Who was the mover again? It was Councillor Bulmer and the seconder?
Yeah, Matt's moving it, John Arnold seconding, and then all in favor? Aye.
Perfect.
None opposed, carried unanimously. Okay, the second last item, or in this particular section, Mary, you're up again with the Puzzle Pioneer.
No, I think we're past that, aren't we?
No, that's item 10.3 on the agenda.
I'm not sure. Well, tell us about what you're doing with the Puzzle Pioneer. I think you already have, quite frankly.
I thought, well, then what was I? I'm sorry. I thought that's what I was responding to.
No, you were just talking about cemeteries and early deaths.
Oh, okay. Well, it's simply that I'm continuing to submit articles. I hope the committee's fine with that.
And excellent articles they are. Now, Hillary, do we need a resolution that Mary continue publishing in the Puzzle Pioneer?
We do. So we've got resolution 2020-004, that the verbal report regarding the Puzzle Pioneer by Mary Tivy be received for information.
Moved.
Move to accept this resolution.
John Levac second, or sure. The way we go on that. All in favor? Aye. Carried. Okay. Item 10.5, the Caulfield Carter Property Information Update. Mary, you're back in the chair.
This is just an information item. I received an email from Stephen Robinson in late October. He is the heritage planner for the city of Guelph, in which he said that the city of Guelph is going to want to get rid of the Carter farmhouse. It's on their list of stranded assets. Now, just let me back up. So the city of Guelph owns the Puslinch property, the Caulfield Carter farmhouse, which we visited on a site tour a few years back. It's early. There have been some additions to it. It's 1850s, but Caulfield was one of the earliest settlers in this part of the township. It is on the land where the city spring grounds are, and the city rented it out for many years and then boarded it up and does not want it utilized as for any form of occupation because they're trying to preserve their water sources. So the city wants to remove it from its current location. And they're wondering about a destination. Now, at this point, I had told them to speak to the clerk or deputy clerk of the township and provide all the background material. I don't know if they did that, and maybe I should have spoken to the township staff before I had this item put on the agenda. But it's just an information item. It takes the city quite a while to work through these things. It may not come to us for another term, but yeah.
So, Mary, if I could ask a question. You said that Puslinch owns the property.
No, the city owns the property. Think of them as the property owner, but the house is in Puslinch.
But okay, fine. But the physical assets, building and land and buildings are owned by the city.
Yes, and the city wants to get rid of the building because it's not maintaining it. So they have a category for buildings they choose to ignore called stranded assets.
I can give some additional background as well.
Oh,
thank you, Matt.
During the 2000-2003 term of council is when the city first approached the township to have, they actually applied for a demolition permit for the house, giving the same reasons you just given. Our Heritage Committee of the day let us know that this was the only example of that type of architecture left in the township. The English square, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the only one of that style. We also received requests from members of the Guelph Heritage Committee asking us to protect it. So council did, I guess, the rules of the day would allow a municipality to not issue a demolition permit. So that's why it stayed. But of course, the rules of the day have changed. And during the interceding years, they had a plan to, they were going to put a water education center there. Moved some of their water staff out there. That never came to be. So I can understand why they're back again, because it is, as you, I think the other committee members recognized when we were there on the tour, it's being demolished by neglect. But I'm encouraged that they're talking about moving it. That'd be an enormous expense on their part. And I'm struggling with this one as well. So I'd like to hear, as you said, Mr. Chair, that the staff might have some other feedback on this. Maybe they've had discussions since. So any updates would be very helpful.
Hillary, Courtney, have you had any feedback on this item at all? Or any additional information you can give to us?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I've not been contacted. I can confirm with our CAO clerk to see if he's been contacted. And then we can keep the committee updated if they do reach out to us.
Thank you. That suitable with the rest of the committee. Okay. Yeah, Matt, and Mary, well, the whole committee, we were all there. It's an interesting old building, but boy, when they decide to demolish by abandonment, it gets really tough. I couldn't possibly see how they could justify economically moving the building, and just very sad that their imagination is not such that when we were there, I believe that we were told that the plans were to turn it into a education center, move some of the water control people out there. Sounded like a fabulous idea. I'm not sure I buy that Guelph's water is going to be contaminated by the occupancy of a building on that site in that location. But however, I don't know what we can do about it, because if we say, no, you're not going to have a building permit, eventually we're going to find it's just a pile of rubble there. It's very sad.
Mr. Chair, if I could add a comment. I think, and Mary, perhaps you can help me with this, but I do think that the architectural features of this particular building have been well documented. And actually we have some, if memory serves, we have some early photographs demonstrating the architecture of this house. Some of those specific items that make it so distinctive no longer exist. Mm-hmm. The one chimney's been knocked down, the front window has been changed, but I think we are fortunate that we have got this documented. Worst case scenario, I think we can still support that the comment that Councillor Bulmer made about this specific individual style of construction. Mm-hmm. Grateful for that. I'm grateful that the Heritage Committee has done that.
No, you're right, Barb. We can't save everything. You're absolutely right. And it is well documented. So we do have historical records. We have reference for people to go back and look at if that's what they want to do. They just can't see the physical building because its day has come, I guess. Its usefulness is over. It's like a farm building. Farmer doesn't want an abandoned barn around. He wants it out of there. It's no longer usable, even though it may look very pretty. Mm-hmm. I understand that. Any other, Matt, do you have any other comments? I see Matt's muted.
No comments.
Oh, okay. Yes, Mary.
Well, simply that, you know, the property was associated as well with a mill, and there's lots of debates about the value of moving buildings out of their historical context. And my response to the heritage planner was, you know, functionally, can this building be moved? It's a huge stone building. It's been altered so much that I don't think the heritage value is visible any longer in it. I think there's a fair bit of mold that would need to be remediated. And most importantly, moving a building like this that was constructed where it is for a definite reason seems to undermine the value of it being reconstructed somewhere else.
Thanks, Mary. Mm-hmm. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mary, that is a aha moment for me. What you just said, moving something from its historical context. We have spent a lot of discussion in the past year or 18 months becoming aware of heritage landscapes. And you alluded to that when you mentioned that this particular house was part of the Cook's Mill, Caulfield Carter Mill establishment. And, it drives home the point that including these buildings in their cultural context and attributing more heritage landscape to some of this gives us a better concept and understanding of what life was like when these buildings were built and the type of culture that evolved in our community at that time. But I do agree with you, just by preserving the building and moving it to another location, that is not going to enhance that. That is not going to let us remember what it was all about. So I do appreciate that comment. I never thought about it before, that automatically moving a building is going to preserve the elements. So
thanks, Barb. And just to sort of wind this up, I think, Mary, this really brings us full circle back to your original comments, if I got them correct, that we really do have to be cognizant of the provenance of what we're doing and what we're saying and how it fits in context here. And you're right, moving the building, I think, would be a huge waste of money. And it's not, and you're right, once you take it out of that location, it really is just a big old stone building. Historically.
So sorry to interrupt, John. So just to sum this up then, City of Guelph owns it. They've come up with the idea to move it. And one by one, everybody on our committee is saying, don't bother, just destroy it. Do I understand that? Is that where we stand on this?
I think that's
we're a vicious crew here. We really are.
John,
yes.
I'm not saying that. I am questioning the process of conserving this building. So the City of Guelph doesn't want it. And if they ask the Township of Puslinch, do you want this? What does that mean for us in terms of even if they paid for the moving costs and the reconstruction, what does that mean for us in terms of the long-term heritage value of the building, management of the building, interpretation of the building? I don't think we're saying kill the building. I think what we're saying is we may not be able to resuscitate that building.
Yeah, I take your point.
I think you're probably right, based on my recollection of that particular building.
Yeah, I'm going to hold up for those who don't know what it looks like. This is what it looked like 100 years ago.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
now it doesn't look like that.
There was that, I believe it was a community center building in Puslinch that actually got moved to Milton. And I know you're a big fan of that one. This one is in a different league for sure. So yeah, I guess the logical response would be go the easy route and just let them take it down. But I just find it kind of interesting that it's the owner actually has the idea of preserving it, and it's the Heritage Committee that's saying, why bother?
Okay, any further comments on that? If not, I guess Hillary, do we need a resolution on that?
We do. So we've got a resolution 2021-005 that the verbal report regarding the Caulfield Carter property information update by Mary Tivey be received for information, and staff to update committee of the township has been updated on this property.
Moved. Thanks, John. Seconded. I'll second it. All in favor? All right. Opposed? None. Carried unanimously. Okay, are there any further items that we need to cover, Hillary? I think we've got pretty much everything on the agenda. Well done on this, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. All we need now is just the time of adjournment and then a quick resolution for adjournment, and then the meeting is over unless anybody else has any other items.
Okay, movement to adjourn or terminate. Thank you, Mary. Seconded. Thanks, Barb. All in favor? All right, carried unanimously.
Okay, so the resolution, the resolution 2021-06 that the Heritage Committee hereby adjourns at 3:02 p.m.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, John.